John, I hit record, it's two separate recordings. I just hit the red button, that's all I did. I don't know if I did anything.
I'm not guaranteeing anything. You can't tell.
Hey Dennis, I know we're gonna work on these things, can we readdress the sale of, cause that's gonna come to public, and I just wanna make sure that everybody's on board with, that sale of that Patterson Lane lot.
As far as I know, we weren't
We're
gonna
not
sell it.
selling it, all right?
No,
Good.
no, that's my recommendation. We don't sell it.
That's what we said.
The other two are on board. Yeah, but I thought didn't we vote at one time?
You did vote to sell it.
We voted twice.
You voted the first time to sell it, and then I think with the conditions that the easements remain, and then I think you had a reconsideration 2 weeks later.
Okay.
We recommend leasing it, not, well, we don't recommend it. If it's gonna be transferred,
We said don't sell it, lease it, or give it an easement.
I just wanted to make sure that I was clear with what the board recommended before the public hearing.
It was a lease. The Conservation Commission said, do whatever you want with it, because there's no value to them, but.
Yeah.
Big problem with all the easements, it's like a crossroads for all the easements, there are a lot of them.
I know. Well, and that was my concern, is if we sell that to anybody, they now own the easements, and I think the power, the water, everything along Patterson Lane comes through there. So they could own Patterson Lane.
Yep.
That was
And more importantly, like Ben said, that pipe, the abandoned pipe, let's say the Air Force tears out the tanks and they tear up the pipe going all the way up to that point, but they don't tear it out underneath the spalding, the person who owns that lot is gonna own that pipe going under the spalding. And they could hold, not us, we'll all be dead and buried, but they'll own somebody years from now. And they could sell the town of Hexham if we wanted to put a sewer pipe through there or.
We ever saw them, they came to the town, they said they're gonna build that pipe, which is what they were planning on doing. And we have that, we should ask them not to, just vacate it and cap it.
Yep.
Okay.
That's great.
All right.
All right,
I just
so
wanna make sure
I think
that-
everybody back has one to be here.
Eric, whatever.
Okay. So, I'll give you a little history first. I called John Nancy. Told him it's a right, we were hoping we were gonna be here for the meeting, the last one on these things. And he said he never received word about it from the chairperson for the HCC. So I said, well, I'm concerned because we're talking about these things, and again, I'm surprised that again, nobody here again tonight. I don't know what's going on. So, Bob, just let you know, if you're hearing anything at the selectman level, John sent out emails, and you've got a copy of, he also talked to the chairperson. I called and said to John Lynch, I think it was the vice chair, he's not, I know him better than anybody. And so I called him and said, hey, did you receive any notes about this, or have any knowledge of it? He goes, nothing. So I talked to him, well, what it's about? I said, well, more than anything, I'd rather than tell you on the phone what it's about, I said, I gave him a little, it's about defining the boundaries of the HCC. We really would like to make sure to nail it down. I said, so as far as the merits of it, this calls more for having you come here to give us some feedback, if you had any. So anyway, for whatever it's worth, I'm not sure if the word's just not getting out, if I got, what the deal, I have no idea. John, go ahead.
So I don't know if we wanna talk about any of these things tonight, we've talked about everything. I made all the changes that we talked about at our last meeting, and I'll just go through, I guess I'll just go through real quickly. I added these not because they're gonna be on the ballot, but because I wanted just a placekeeper. So I'm under my number 1, it says administrative changes not requiring town meeting approval. I'm putting them in there only to remind us continuously that those are gonna be made, and we will make them after town meeting when the zoning amendments are approved, but I just wanna make sure they didn't get lost in the shuffle. So those are that. 2, we already talked about it, it's, the Board of Selectmen, agree with it, I think they're in if there's a planning board application, pending, there's no reason for the board of selectmen to require, surety. So that's gonna be, hopefully removed. Number, 3, again, we talked about this, it's a very simple thing, that, when there's a conflict with zoning ordinance or parts thereof, that the more stringent regulation applies. So we talked about that. Number 4, we hashed out at our last meeting, this was Chris Cross's language, that the new definition of frontage will read, shall mean the distance of lot borders of a public road right of way. In those instances in which a property abuts multiple public ways, the planning board shall determine which portion of the frontage is subject to front setback requirements. When we left it, you guys all voted to accept Chris's language, I think maybe just by a nod. And his language did not include the 2 words that I added, and those are public road. And the reason I say that is that there may be cases where there's a public right of way and it ain't a road. I don't know where, but there may be. So I think, just to be clear, it has to be public road by road. It's all assumed, but, so, I added those 2 words in.
Wait. I think I know what you're trying to say, but you got it wrong, I think. Public road, like, Avery Lane is a public road, privately owned.
It's still all road, right?
Yeah, or the streets around the mall is a road, but it's not privately owned.
So it's the hand.
I think it should be, I think it should say public town, you should probably say town road.
Town or state, color class 5 highway or,
Does anyone understand what I'm saying?
Any public roadway, isn't there any broad statement that hits town, city, state, federal? I don't know if there is a.
yeah, the statute specifically says class 5 highway or better. And by better, like class 1 is a small turnpike, I don't know what the heck a 2 is. And then like a 3 would be Goslin Road. So we could say class 5 highway right of way or better. It's a little weird,
They
but
change, right?
we could say that.
I think I know what you're trying to say. Do you understand what I'm saying? Does what I'm
Well,
saying
I
make
know,
sense?
no, I know, I just, when you guys, like Chris Lange, just said right away, and then I got concerned that, you know.
Yeah, you're right.
You have a road, it's not a road, but it's a.
So do we say class?
How about say on a town public road right away? It's getting real wordy, isn't it?
But then you have public in there.
Town road.
What do we put, town
Town road. Town
So what
road.
the statute says is, as it defines frontage, it says,
Wait, let me finish.
it says class, the statute reads, and I don't have my book in front of me, it says class 5 highway or better, or a road approved by the planning board. That's what it probably should say, because like, whatever we're gonna call the subdivision down here, that's gonna be a road approved by the planning board, it's not gonna have any class until it's accepted, or unless it's accepted by the town, but it was still approved by you. So we could say that, class 5 highway or better, or road approved by the planning board. I know it's wordy. That Dennis is concerned, and he's got a valid concern. You look at all the private roads that run through the Fox Run Mall, those are all public roads, but they're not really roads. They're public rights of way, but they're not roads.
If it wasn't a public road, Russ, people could build whatever they want, and you just tell us, well, I'm not subject to your rules, because I'm not on a
Can I
public
say
road.
about the mall?
I'm on a private road. Like the Acreage Road. The Acreage Road is a private road. So they wouldn't have to comply to any of the rules.
So let me give you an example. There's another one. There's someone right now wants to come in by the mall. The road that's there could qualify, it's a private road, public right of way, could qualify as frontage on a public right of way, but yet it's not a town road. I don't think that was our intention. I'll tell you right now, someone's trying to break out the theater as a separate, it's landlocked, but they want us to take the mall and just subdivide it up into little chunks. So I just wanna let you know, the Wallace, that's doing really good. So
The
it's
cross
one. Okay, so,
So I know it's wordy, but I think, I mean, I know the rush you're scratching your head, but I think it's very clear. It says, I mean, to say class 5, which every road in this town, all town roads are class 5 highways, right?
Yeah.
With the exception of where I live, there's class 6 roads, there's not many around here, and those don't qualify as frontage because they're subject to gates and bars, even if they're unmaintained. So that's why it'd be class 5 highway or better, or a road approved by the planning board.
so, let me
Yeah,
ask you.
I'm still, I guess I'm gonna have to look at this some more, but I would have said, you know, why can't you just say, again, a public road, or if you wanna say a public or private road, but it's gonna be, you know, it's bordering a road.
Well,
Yeah, I
again,
would've
Dennis's,
said that-
Dennis's example is a great example, because if you wanna drive from Gosling Road, if you wanna go through the crossings of Fox Run, out through the Fox Run Mall, that's a public road, that's a public
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
It's not in a right of way, it's not a town road, it's not a private road, it's just an access drive through there. Someone could construe that as a public road.
And the owner of that road could tear that road
Yeah.
up, plant trees.
I'm struggling to find more examples, but there's a lot of those around that aren't, I mean, the road that runs from
Okay,
the
so you're saying that
Crappy
there are
Hotel
roads
to
that are
Home
on,
Depot.
right?
They're both
that-
public. at the
Yes,
same time.
goes by.
You know, that crappy road that runs from the old Chevy
That
Cadillac
yellow.
dealership to Home Depot, that's a pretty long road, or
Yeah.
driveway, it's not a road.
Yeah.
That's another one.
Goes all around.
So, that's enforcement, obviously, but there's a few of those around.
Yeah. I'd have to think about that. I know that Newington's a funny town in that, and particularly with the mall development.
The roads out there, a lot of roads that are out there, we actually had some class 6 roads in town.
Yeah.
And we had someone come in who wanted to subdivide using that class 6 road years ago. It's no longer there, but roads gotta be a real tricky thing. You gotta be careful what you say, because they'll give you exactly what you asked for.
No, I know.
John, you think you got it all covered?
Say what you mean what you say. That's what it comes down to.
Okay, so moving on, I was gonna ask for volunteers. Dennis said he and I were gonna get together today to talk about number 5. But, we've got I think maybe Thursday of this week, hopefully Dennis and I can get together. We gotta define what the Bloody Point District is, and then I need to come up with a description on the next page of what the Nimble Hill District is, because I wanna make sure we incorporate the cemetery or what, you know, the stone wall, the fence. So and I have not touched that, so nothing's changed. But the Bloody Point District is not just, we gotta define it. It's not just that map and parcel, and I don't know how we're gonna describe it, but we'll come up with something.
I'm not sure how you're gonna describe it either. I was talking to Peter earlier and saying that, you know, I would prefer to have these districts called out by landmarks and bounds, almost more like you would do a deed, for the property. In other words, you know, rather than saying, 200 feet west of Nibble Hill, because I don't really know where 200 feet is. I mean, I would have said it, you know, you could say includes the cemetery or, you know, the church, the library, the Old Town Hall. And then I even look at it and say, well, is the town garage supposed to be part of the historic district? I don't know, it doesn't seem
No,
reasonable
no.
to me, but I'd actually like it explained, because now that we are doing this, and I'm one of them, I'm trying to figure out just where this historic district is. And, I'm unclear.
Well, typically, if you read zoning districts from all across the United States, I mean, they'll generally say, again, Newington is a sort of a cool town because you've got all these roads that create boundaries. So like all of the mall is, everything inside those roads is one district. But typically, if you have a residential district or a commercial district that abuts a residential district, it'll be 500 feet off the edge of the right of way. That's common, so, you know, it's easy to measure.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it'll be the back of property lines, but they never line up quite right. So, with Bloody Point, it's even worse because it's not even, it's part of a lot, but it's not even the whole part. And then up here, you're right, Russ, on the right-hand side, you got the highway garage there, it's,
Yeah.
you know, so we gotta come up with a distance.
But
Or
and what you made me think about while you were speaking was, you know, I go by where the residential district is, by the map that goes with the ordinance. You know, can we draw it on the map?
It is.
It's on the map.
Okay, so then can we say, you know, the Nibble Hill district is, that district on Nibble Hill as shown on the map?
Well, sure, but we gotta figure out what the heck it is first. I mean, right now, the problem, and again, we're, in part, we're solving a problem that doesn't exist, to my way of thinking, but it's still a problem. I mean, I don't think it's fair for the people that own land up here that's 700 feet back off of Nimble Hill Road to be part of a historic district. It's not reasonable. It should only go back a certain distance, and any land behind that should just be residential land. So if you look at your zoning map, Russ, it should be on there. But all
Well, it is, but you know what, when you look at it on the map, it's just a little splotch
You mean Bloody Point?
is
You-
kinda hard to.
Are you referring to Bloody Point? Or the?
Oh, you're talking, well, both of them.
Yeah, well, the Nimble Hill one's a
You
much
know, I
bigger
mean-
splotch, but, yeah.
But Bloody Point actually is a little bit more blown up, so that's a little bit better.
Well, it's a little bit better, except there's no description of it, just says Bloody Point.
Right, no,
I don't even know what that means, you know?
I'm with you.
So, the intent was just to have, I think on the left side of Nimble Hill Road going up the hill, that's easy. I think 400 feet makes perfectly good sense. On the right-hand side, we just gotta come up with, you know, some distance, and we all know where it is. I think it's the back wall of the cemetery. And whether we use that as a monument, I like a distance, because it's just
Yeah,
easier to
well-
measure off the road.
I would like to define it in terms where somebody could read the description and understand where it is.
Right. Well, that's why, again, the distance off the road is that's pretty easy to figure out, you know?
Well, if you say, I think there's a rock wall there, Russ, so if we said,
Yeah,
if they measured from Nimble Hill,
yeah.
down,
Little bit.
Little Bay, 428 feet, there's a stone wall, and the district runs along that stone wall to the east, along the cemetery.
There's a stone wall that goes.
But they gotta measure it first, that's all he's saying he's gotta do.
Yeah. And then we gotta figure out Bloody Point.
Well, yeah, I guess what I was saying is.
It's like, I mean, the state did it. They surveyed, they gave it to us and said, here's what we wanna give you, so it's written down.
Could we
Then
see
we-
that?
Yeah,
Where
then
is
we'll-
that?
then maybe we
Yeah,
just,
It's in their proposal to us, when
okay,
they wanted to give it.
okay, then maybe we just use that.
Well, again, you know, you're identifying one point, or maybe it's two, because one of them's gonna be the intersection of, was it Little Bay Road and Nimble Hill? But the other one's the other side of the cemetery, but then it goes up, and then where does it go to? Because
It goes to
you know, it follows a stone wall, but really what you're saying is kind of how I started out, saying, you know, define it like you do on a deed. You know, from this pin to that pin to this to that, you know. and then-
Generally, I mean, that's not how zoning works. I mean, you know, I mean, it's,
Well, I guess let's start out by trying to say, well, I'll ask the board, you know, is the town garage part of
That's a separate
the
discussion.
historic district?
Yes, it is. It's a separate discussion.
It is, but should it be?
Yeah, okay. So,
What, I think what we're trying to do, Russ, is keep the transfer station out. So, we don't want the transfer station in the historic.
well, you know, I understand, but I look at the land that the town owns and what I would have thought was part of the historic district, and I look at, for instance, Chris Cross's house. And I said, well, that apparently is in the historic district, I guess, if I can figure out what
Yeah, it
the
is.
historic
It is.
district
It
is. Except that I don't really know why it's not historic, his house isn't historic.
well, that's not what it's meant to be. I mean, that's not what the historic district means. Chris's house was in there when he built it 25 some odd years ago. He had to get an approval to build that house.
Yeah, I
At the
don't, and I
time,
don't
and
know why.
Chris will
but
tell
we
you,
did, but I
And
don't
Chris
know
will
why.
probably tell you, and he's told me, so that it probably doesn't meet the definition.
Well-
You know, looking back, it's not, it doesn't really fit, but he got an approval, and the whole idea is to make it look historic, so
No,
maybe
well,
the commission failed.
And again, I agree, except, again, I don't know why. In other words, I'm not researching the history or gonna be interested in the history of Newington and go look at Chris Cross's house. You know, I'm gonna look at Old Town Hall and the old house that's down there and the old stone school.
It's just a district.
Russ,
That's all we're defining. is
No, I know it, but
a
I'm wondering why Chris Cross's house
Should I
may
throw
be
that
in the
a different
history.
mic to you, Russ? This may be I just dawned on me, I didn't mean to interrupt. Districts, the best way that I could explain to somebody if they didn't understand any of the mapping is, it's a general area defined by. Now, before, let me just complete the thought. What John is trying to say is, you do a district based on general areas. If Chris's property was within the historic, which you have the old parsonage in front of him, I believe, is it in front of him or behind him? In front, like towards, to the side of him. And then you're in the general area.
Yep.
So if you took his house out of it, how would that district look? It would be historic, and then one house would be residential or normal. You're almost using your logic against yourself, and if you think of it backwards, one house out of maybe 20 locations on the upper right corner, segmented, is not in there when everything else is. That's kind of the best broad stroke I can give you.
No, I understand.
We're
I
creating
think
our own
the
board.
majority, to me, the majority of the stuff in the Nimble Hill district is historic, but not everything is. I mean, they didn't have blacktop roads with yellow lines back in the day, but we do.
Right.
You know, so but the library, the old town hall, the
Yeah.
parsonage, the cemetery, all of those things to me are historic. But Chris's house is not, it just happened to be built there.
Right.
But it had to meet certain criteria when it was built. The thing is that this was an established district, and with an established criteria to keep that, what existed, what already existed, and then the whole point of the criteria is, let's say any one of those buildings caught fire, and somebody was to rebuild them, they would have to follow criteria. It's like downtown Portsmouth on Marcy Street. That is the historic district. They go through criteria. And granted, everybody admits that when Chris's house got built, it did not, the criteria wasn't a colonial style house. But in Portsmouth, it's very strict, extremely strict.
But Russ, but the whole idea of this thing is actually to really correct the thing that you see wrong. You know, all that land behind Chris is raw land. Why would you put that in the historic district? It doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, all we're trying to do is fix that and pull it back, so it's only the land along Nimble Hill Road.
Well, right, but because I could go even further and talk about Harvey's barn there.
it's included,
And I would say,
it's
you know,
included.
should that be in the historic district?
Absolutely.
Because it fits with the house.
Well, so what, so,
It's
It's
an
a-
existing
The
district.
barn, the
It's
barn's
an old house and an
okay,
old barn.
so
They go together.
Aaron's house, I mean, that's an old house.
It's
That's
not
not in the
district.
district.
Not in the district,
Why not?
because it's not.
We're not talking about expanding, we're only
I
talking.
mean, shouldn't that be?
And you can't spot zone, that's the thing. A
What's that?
district, you can't spot zone, you can't spot one house as being
Well,
historic,
Right.
and then
Okay,
another
let-
one take it out.
Okay, I'm gonna try to do this for you real quick. There could be a historic district where the land is undeveloped still within that district, as we have right now. With the historic district, if you wanna build your house there, you have to meet certain criteria. That's it. That's all it is.
No, I
Not more
understand
than
that, but
In the
again, what I'm
district-
saying,
in the district-
why did Chris
Let
Cross
me
have the
finish.
restrictions
But
that
let
he
me
had?
finish.
It
Let
doesn't
me
seem,
finish.
it doesn't seem reasonable.
Let me finish. You know, I want you to listen. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. Just
Only
like
if you
any,
speak, though.
just like any other zone, we don't get into meets and bounds and how far and whatever. And we try to say in general, between the Spalding Turnpike and the river, we talk about the zone that it's in. We don't get into actual things. With where we're at right now, there's a lot of wasted land outside of this district, which is what they were trying to protect, these particular buildings. It was put there many, many years ago, the district. And it made it real easy to read it. It goes all the way from Pease at the gate, all the way down to Nibbler Hill Road, and any abutters to that road, on Nibbler Hill Road, will include. Well, the land goes back several hundred feet.
Yeah.
And what's historic about it is the building, it's not the land.
Yeah.
So,
I get it. I will see whatever you guys have to say. I will say that actually the whole town is historic because the land is so old. It's all historic.
well, let's just turn it over
Russ,
to HCC and let them control the
things
whole
is
town.
old, Russ, it's all things.
You know something, I guess you're right, the whole earth is a historic district.
All right, let's
We
move on.
can put that.
Okay, so I will, Dennis and I will come up with a definite, we'll define those two districts. I'll get the description from the board of
Lulu would like to
selectmen.
under that in a heartbeat.
For the Moody,
We're being recorded, guys.
for Bloody Point. And the final thing that we have, is that we talked about a lot was the, solar, section 2, the solar, ground mount solar, system review. I think the one thing that we got, that we, sort of worked through last time was, 4, section C4, it says, if it can, and this is the way I ended up writing it, if it can be proven that the proposed array will not cause glare that could be seen from the, that will not cause glare that could be seen from neighboring properties in their public spaces. Oh, I should say, will cause glare. May cause glare. May cause glare that can be seen from neighboring properties or public spaces. Non-reflective panels will be required. We talked about that we didn't want to require them because they were so expensive. But if they have any potential to cause glare, they will be required.
That's fair.
And then everything else I think is unchanged.
John, what about glare to airplanes?
How do you, I don't know. I mean, if they're on the roof, I don't know.
I would say meet FAA requirements, or, I don't know. I don't think it's a big issue, but let's worry about us and the FAA will take care of it, it's another issue.
Yeah, they could enforce people to remove them, right?
Yes, they can.
Bob, I know we're thinking about an array up there, out behind the transfer station, am I right? No?
No. God, no. You're talking about community solar?
Well, we'll still be,
Yeah, never mind. All right, talk to you later.
And that's it. So I have no other changes. What I'd like to do is just, clean up the one mistake I just found in my own language. I will change, amendment number 4 to clarify what a road is. And then, Dennis and I will, tighten up we'll get a better definition of what the 2 historic districts are. And then I don't know what you wanna do. I mean, at this point, we can schedule the public hearing. I mean, you've already moved, most of these to public hearing, and I put that in each one. So, number 2, you moved to public hearing, 3, you moved to public hearing, 4 you did, 5 you passed on because we weren't ready to. And then, yeah, the rest we have to deal with. So, I would suggest that we have one more meeting to finalize these and then move them all to public hearing. They'll have a public hearing. As Dennis says, I hope that people don't, I'm hoping that people don't come out of the woodwork to fight the district changes. If they do, I don't think this is worth going to the mat.
It's not.
It's not. I think it should be cleaned up, but if people are, adamantly opposed, then let it go.
The only one that I see is, I think it's very, really important, is defining the use for Bloody Point. That's, the uses there that, that is not clear, right? And we just don't want to allow residential people into that site, that's all.
And I think that the other thing we should.
very comfortable telling that.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say, Bob. I think what we should think about doing is this, I think this will, I think the amendment that Dennis speaks of is very important. If the thing is sold to a historic group, then we can just get rid of the district altogether, because then it's just gonna be a property in the middle of a district.
Something that John said, last meeting about Bloody Point is that was spot zoning. It really shouldn't be a district, it should be an overlay for a particular building and grounds surrounding it immediately.
Well, I went further. I actually think it's illegal. I mean,
Did you ask Carrie? I thought you were gonna ask.
I didn't, because she's been so tied up with this trial that she, you know, I haven't asked her. Plus,
I thought you were gonna talk to John.
well, I did, but he didn't get back. But you know, more important, you know, I think it would be suicide to try to get rid of this. I mean, I think if we got a legal opinion that said that little teeny piece of land is its own zoning district, I think you could be in trouble if you try to get rid of it. I don't think it's right, but it's also been there for 25 years.
But would they agree to the overlay idea, which is a compromise?
Well, it doesn't matter, Jane. Whether it's an overlay or a zone, it's still spot. You can't, it'd be like me zoning Russ's house for industrial uses. Whether it's an overlay or zoning district, it's illegal.
But John, the building that's there and the service that was provided there is of historic nature. I mean,
No, I get that, but you know,
But I
that's
think
not the
if
way.
and when the state sells that, whoever buys it is gonna challenge the district.
And if it's bought by a historic group, then we don't care. Then the whole issue goes away. And I said, it looks like that's the way it might be going. I don't know.
What if it gets bought by a law office and they wanna build, big law?
That would work. We would allow that.
Yeah,
I mean, but then,
Oh, I
what if you
would
wanna
love
buy it, what if you wanna buy it and live in it? That's the bigger
that's a
concern.
different thing, yeah.
I think we all are concerned about turning it into a home, a residence. I mean, especially there, God.
You know, this is, again, a legal question for Carrie, but I would have said that the precedent is that area is historic or in its own historic district, right, Bloody Point. So, I mean, somebody can challenge that, somebody always could, but I don't know, I guess I don't know that it's spot zoning because
Well,
I didn't put it.
Russ, I have no problem, I mean, I don't even know what they call that, the Sprague
Well,
retreat center there, the other, I mean, if they had that whole point part of it, I would think that's a reasonable thing. But if you look at the zoning map, it's a part of a parcel. I mean, it's teeny.
yeah, supposedly that whole Alex Johnson Center is a conference center, but that sits on Bloody Point.
That's right.
But it's, we have nothing to do with it.
No, but that, I mean, if they incorporated that whole point in the historic district, I would say, yeah, that probably passes the street face test.
Well, you
The
know-
way it was done does not pass the test.
If you're standing on the road, looking down at the old railroad station, everything to the right of it is Alex Johnson, everything to the left of it, the state is not giving up. So that tiny little sliver that has the rail center on it, that's the only thing they wanna
And
give
Bob,
up.
everything to the right is industrially zoned, everything to the left is, we don't really know, but it's
Yeah, and the state will
historic.
give it up because they're holding that in case they have to build a new bridge.
Which is smart.
Yeah, so, but you've got that tiny little sliver, and the road's not even part of it because that's a road, but you have to actually get down to where the gate is, and that's where they start, where they wanna give us.
Is that a town road?
I don't think so.
No.
Hey, guys, there may be a simple out of the box, but you have to tell me how this doesn't work. I'm flipping this upside down.
How what?
I'm gonna try an idea, throw it out, and see if you can make it work. Because we're not getting anywhere with what we're going back and forth.
I think we are.
Okay, I'm gonna still throw it out. We can go back to your idea, but here's the spot zoning for bothering me. It's bothered me from the very beginning, and this is my idea. We don't try to spot zone it. We don't try to make it historic. We make it contiguous to those businesses along that area, granting variances, or none of this is right, granting variances to the homes that are there. So we're not changing anything that's there. We're continuing the zone, so we're not spot zoning, and we're covering Bloody Point with that zonage that we have for Stone Face, that we have for, does that
Well, that's
help
what I
at
thought
all?
that's what I thought we would do for us, is not, I mean, to say Bloody Point is a historic district, I'm fine with it. But the state will never do anything with their portion on the left, and the Alex Johnson Center is just like our highway shit. It's in the zone, but it's not historic. So,
This is where it's been defined on here.
yeah,
It doesn't include the whole point.
So, so I brought this in, and I don't think, and I wanna give you a warning. Well, I can give you a warning, I don't think this map is consistent with the zoning map in the book. And as Bob says, I don't think it's even correct, because I think that's the house, what was it?
rail station.
I think it's actually on this side of the road, isn't it?
Almost straight down the road.
Straight down? So here's the problem. I think this could have been historic, and I think this could have been historic. All they did was make this little point historic, and it's not even the whole map and parcel. I mean, I don't know what this is.
Who gets that? State owns that.
State owns it.
It's all, so as I told you before, here's the map, here's the tax, here's the lot of record. This piece right here, this, and that. That's all one lot of record. Which we have to deal with, we gotta deal with that separately. Because the state wants to sell this, they wanna sell this, they wanna keep this, which they have. They have.
The state wants to sell that?
Waterfront.
The state is in the process of selling.
They
But
offer
but I don't know what they're selling. Bob has said he has a description. It's not, I don't think it's all, it's just a portion of that. And so I think they're gonna probably sell this, they're gonna sell this, they're gonna keep that, they're gonna sell that. So that's an issue Dennis and I have been working on, like how the hell do you, it's one lot of record, I think there has to be something.
They don't have a subdivision.
Right.
If they don't have a John, I asked John to contact the state, he did, and contacts he knows, and they said, hey, do you know that's not separate lots? And they went, oh, then we said, does the state have the authority to do a subdivision in a town? And the answer is, we don't think so.
And I don't wanna slow him, I mean, we can figure
And
this
John
out.
called him to be very, John, you want to do this?
Ask her, hey, how'd you guys determine that that was the
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter, there's no description of the zoning. Look at the zoning ordinance, it just says, Bloody Point.
Can I bring it back to the point, we're not buying it as a town, so we have to deal with it, this is the unconsequential effect of not doing something. We've got two zones there, we got waterfront, and we've got commercial, that abut that beautiful little story. Let's just take it tan or make it pink.
We already did, we're gonna make it, office, we said we're gonna make it, office. We already said that. Yeah, we already
It's done.
A
But-
historic site does not have to be in a historic district.
Right.
Well,
That's the
and
basic
I think as everybody said, or Dennis said, the whole thing was copying, what it should have been is it should have been an overlay from day one.
Completely wrong.
It's water, it's done, so I don't think we're gonna change that, but this whole issue may go away if the property is sold, then we probably don't care, then we can probably just get rid of that district. But until then, I think we should clean up what the uses are allowed there, and residential uses should not be allowed, right? So it's a weird situation that's been around for years and years and years, and now we're doing it. And then the
The reason why I know we had to deal with it, because all of a sudden it's coming up to say that before the state owned it, and then they had an interest in selling it.
Well, if it goes to a house, right, that should have been an historic site, but when they moved the house, now they've separated the house from the land, nobody cares about the land anymore, and the doctor's office fixed up the house, so everyone's fat down and happy.
There was a big public hearing on that.
Yep, no one cares,
Oh, yes, there's still half this room.
it still happened,
Yeah, it did, but don't say no one cared.
there wasn't enough horsepower to care.
There was a lot of people in the room on both sides of that equation, there really were,
What year was that?
a long time ago.
Yeah, that'd be 10, 15 years ago.
Like 19, a long time ago. 19 something. That was 15 years ago at least.
So anyway, I think what I will do is, I'll get together with Dennis, we'll come up with a description for both of these districts based on the Board of Selectmen, what they have for a description of Bloody Point, we'll come up with a description for the right side of Nimble Hill Road by the cemetery, bring it back to you, and then hopefully all these amendments, you can have a public hearing. I don't know how many we're gonna need, they're pretty simple, I would almost think one public hearing would be enough,
You
but,
need to have two by law, don't you?
well, if changes are made, you only need to have one, if any changes are made, you need to have two. So, we have plenty of time, you know, we have enough going on, so we can have a public hearing, if no one comes, we'll just go to other business. You know, we don't need to come out for just a public hearing, so, that's where I think we're at.
All right.
You asking for a motion to adjourn?
No.
You're not?
We have minutes, we have minutes, or we have no
We
minutes?
don't, because
Just
we had a meeting, last week.
Chris called me before coming into the meeting, and he made me promise to talk about this.
Sorry.
He wants to look at some of the lands that the town owns, put them into a natural land overlay, like, for protection of, for recreation and use of wildlife as well as recreation, like the old town forest, as an example.
Do we, I know somebody does, but I have no idea how much and where and what land we own.
Well, it's not just that, he's talking about that, he's talking about Fox Point, he's talking about, yeah, these are drawn out, and also possibly, Knights Hill.
Yep.
You know what that is, and then possibly the Flint Pit area.
Natural resources, I think is the word.
Yeah, natural
I'm looking for.
resource overlay, we already have it in some, I think in a couple different areas, so he wanted me to plant that idea in your mind tonight, and I said, fine, I said, I'm not gonna get into detail about it, I'll mention it, he did mention it at the last meeting, but I don't think people really listened to him at that point, we were kinda tired and we wanted to get out. So we did that, and that was.
You know where the Night Hill is, right?
Yeah.
Right across from,
So this is going to be for the ability for town residents to be able to see all town-owned land to go and.
It'll just show how serious the town is about conserving land and having open space. That's how important it is. It's all about that.
I think it would be good to catalog and at least get on a map
Yeah.
all the town land that we all own.
Is it not in the master plan, I thought?
I thought it was on a master plan to show all the land that the
We
town
should have it
owns.
on the master.
I thought it was in the master plan.
But
in the conservation area.
we should look at that, but he doesn't think, he said, but if we declare it as a natural resource, whatever the term you use, it would help us, I guess, possibly, and
Well, cause there's some talk within the rec department, there's a couple younger guys that wanna build a walking path on that Night Hill. And they think they can get a mile out of there, so, you know, go in on one side, loop it around and come back out. And that way, at least give folks
well,
at
they're already
least a
late.
mile stretch off.
Peter and Chris have been working on that for, how many years, Peter? How many years you been working on the path, you and Chris?
On Night Hill?
No.
The whole
on
town.
Walking paths within the town.
So, I think they have some pretty good ideas of how to do that without,
Who made the one over here on the side of the parking lot that goes through the woods and? I
You mean
can't
right
remember
here?
where-
Yeah. I just noticed that.
I didn't know if that was,
I didn't do it.
no, I didn't either. I saw it one day and I was like, wow, somebody made a path. No, like the ones down on Fox Point, you know, we use them, you know, but they do need some maintenance.
But what is the implications or priority, or does, by making it a natural resource,
I don't know.
what protection does it grant?
I don't know.
Well, Dennis, thank you for introducing that topic to us, it'll give us something to think about, and when Chris comes back, he can explain it.
You could be.
I just,
don't
well,
be-
I think, you know, Dennis has been, you know, every month for the last 2 or 3 months or whatever, Dennis says, we gotta, you know, we keep a catalog of zoning amendments that you think are important. I think, I don't see the benefit of doing this if it's town-owned land predominantly, then the town controls it. So I don't think that there's any reason to rezone these areas, and plus I think it's too late. I mean, that's something that would require a lot of time and effort to try to figure out. And at the end of the day, what are we accomplishing? You know, there is zoning that makes sense. If you have an area where there's wellheads, municipal wellheads, yeah, you wanna protect those, so you don't have gas stations and dry cleaning facilities in there. But if it's town owns the land, I don't know what zoning is gonna do to protect it. But
And I can tell you, there's no appetite in this town to sell or, you know, get rid of any town land. There's a piece down on the end of Airport Road that someone keeps asking us to sell.
And Councilman saying, no, 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 no.
And the history is that, the selectmen have not sold, which was quoted when we even talked about this Patterson Lane thing, you know.
Bob, when's that public hearing gonna be on that, 15?
I don't know if it's been scheduled, but I knew it was coming up.
I think it's very soon, so.
I'm
Send that if you
not
want
sure
to.
if it's posted and scheduled yet.
So the only other thing I have is, I asked you all, well, two things. I asked you all to think about possible uses in the commercial zone. And I said, I'm not sure if we wanna have the automobile dealership type thing. Do we want automobile dealerships to take over the malls as an example? As you see in Manchester. So, you know, if you allow one, you can allow 100 of them. So that could wind up happening, would be a very low return, but it's really important that we focus on that, because I know a lot of people are looking at the malls and trying to redevelop them. If we don't say what we want it to be, it will come and tell us. Now, I think we're pretty wide open with just about anything except for residential. I think that's what we've said over and over and over again. Because we're trying to keep the residential side away from the industrial and commercial areas, because the way I look at Portsmouth, it all started off with just you had the port, and then you had a section of the old historic district, which is down there, where the residential grew out to the port, even getting to the point of wanting to, they're actually shutting down part of it. They shut down part of the operation that was down there, and that was the scrap metal thing. That's gone, and the people are still even pushing harder. Not as much as they were before, they really hated that, but the port is probably one of the biggest things that we need to protect, and I think the state knows that too. But if we start allowing the creep to get closer and closer and closer, it's going to be something we really need to look at and make sure we get it right, because it's kind of important. On the 21st of January, I was meeting with the RPC. 21st of January, they're going to have a work session. It's going to be talking about housing in general for the state and the region. And it's going to be by invite, so I know I'll be there, but I don't know who's going to be invited or not, but I think it should all be worth going to watch. I know Exeter's going to be hosting it, and that's their economic development committee is going to be doing that. But they're very slanted to pro-housing. They're not like, and they even said they looked at Newington, they said, oh my God, if we give up, you know, if we start developing the waterfront, there goes the port. The port's a much bigger resource for the state than it is even to us. So
They just invested, what, 24 million in that dredging of the turnaround?
yeah, it's gonna be done. And Peter's been working on that for a long, long time before Mike Donahue got into it, I think, if I remember right, on that particular board. And, so anyways, for whatever it's worth, I think it's something we gotta protect, very carefully. That being the case, then I'm ready for a motion, and I.
Well, wait,
Oh, you have
you
something?
started on the car dealerships, are we gonna,
Oh.
is that something you wanna pursue or not?
Does anyone have any ideas?
Well, I think we should we don't want just car lots. If we're gonna have car lots developed there, then we need something we can tax, like a.
But either you allow it or you don't. That's the
Well,
problem.
or I think the other thing you could do is you could say, no car dealership, car dealerships have to be 1,500 feet apart from each other, 2,000 feet apart. I mean, you could do something like that.
5 miles.
I mean, you've got two right now. You could just
Yeah.
say, you could just take out car dealerships as an allowed use, and you got two.
We did that with restaurants. Restaurants started taking over the office district, but then they all
But
failed.
the other thing I think we also need to realize is that our offices aren't gonna come back. I don't know. I mean, you can't rent an office in Boston City.
Before it was office, it was considered, I'm not sure if it was business it was called, or if it was called, I have the old maps at home. Or if it was called, industrial, not waterfront industrial. But anyways,
So,
Here's,
are we proposing to just eliminate car dealerships?
yeah, or add something, if you wanna add something.
so here's my question. I think that we're going to be making a recommendation, especially for the ballot. The things that come to my mind mechanically is, what is the financial best asset to go into a given space? our way down. The second is, when you get into, as you were saying, car lots or car dealerships, you could end up with the automobile there, and it could look horrible. So then you're killing the charm of the town, or the attraction of businesses to the town. Because you're gonna want restaurants, you're gonna want things that people are gonna be, that are working locally to go to, not that. So I would say put a moratorium that we've hit our max and stop, unless it is a huge revenue maker, and again, I don't believe it is.
Well, I mean, since I drive up and down the East Coast all the time, what is a Carvana worth? I mean, I bet you those things are, I bet you they're worth a fortune. You know, the elevator things,
No,
I bet you, I don't know what, and they don't take up much space, I mean, I don't know, Jim, but, and I'm not suggesting just because you have car dealerships, you're gonna get a certain, you know, you're gonna get a car silo, but, or whatever you call them, I don't know.
Car vaults.
Uh,
Just like data drives.
So I guess it's just I mean, I think like the Subaru dealership is kind of a cool amenity. I mean, if you're a guy and your wife drags you to the mall, you say, I'm gonna go walk around a car lot, you know, but how many do you need? You got 2 right now, is that enough?
Yeah.
Your call. You know, Dennis is right, I mean, you know,
Does the Subaru dealer actually have a dog groomer in there, or do they advertise that?
Really?
They have
A dog sauna.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, is that actually in there?
I don't know.
Is that an additional
That's not-
use?
Is that approved?
That's what I'm asking. I saw their ad and they said, bring your dog to the doggy daycare spa.
Have Steven go down and see him.
So,
Oh, boy.
I'm just,
Poor dog.
I'm talking out loud, cause you know,
It's good.
and all their commercials are very dog friendly. So I didn't know if maybe they just, like, all the employees got to keep their dog there, and then they started doing dog grooming on other people's too, while they come in and get
Dog
their
grooming place just
Volvo and
like-
filter.
Like 200 or 300 yards from that building.
No, I think it's in it.
Yeah, it looks like it's in
No,
that
I'm talking
building.
about the one that
That
was
other one we were
approved.
Oh.
approved on Gosselin Road, right?
But, yeah, have them check that out. I don't know. I saw the commercial and was wondering.
It's kind of funny, because there's a
One
one car
where
guy
it would
that
imply
has
that
2
it's
dogs, and then one
in the
dog
dealership.
on TV.
oh, I know, I know.
Well, that's a car, like the lady from Rochester, the Toyota dealer, you know, she's got a dog, and then the Toyota guy down here in Portsmouth, he's got two collies. So it's almost like a car
Yeah,
dealer
but a
thing,
grooming,
be
but
friendly with
a
dogs.
grooming business is
That's-
not.
That's
Yeah.
one.
So do you want?
Picturing a dog going to a car wash.
Alright,
So
so
what's the verdict on, do you wanna eliminate car dealerships?
Yes.
let's have some discussion on it. Doesn't mean we're going to.
I tell you what, I'll write it up. I mean, it's pretty simple. All we do is remove car dealerships as allowed use. And then you can have a discussion
But
in the next
also,
meeting.
but also, if we wanna add something, that, look at the ordinance, is what I was trying to say, look at, is there something there that's missing? Or is there something there that would be great, you know?
What is the highest and best use of that land?
I mean, Amazon right now, I mean, they're trying to run away from Tornado Alley, so we can write them up here.
Well,
There's already been a knock.
All right. Nothing
So
else?
the final thing is, we just need to decide when the next meeting is. Dennis did ask you all if you'd be available on the 27th, I think. I don't know if we need to meet again, your call. I think if we met on the 27th, it'd be pretty brief, because this is all we're gonna have.
It's a Monday,
I'll be here.
It doesn't matter to me, I'll be here too,
2 days after Christmas.
but I don't think it's urgent either, so,
We can,
I mean, do we have business?
no.
Just the.
I think this will be it, and I think that, and then, I do know that, I mean, we know that the 10th is gonna be Shattuck, Shackford. And then, I don't know how
Yeah,
long
we
that'll
did.
take.
Bob, are you hearing anything from anyone in town? I mean, I know when you talked to Martha, is anyone talking about the ordinances and things we're proposing? Are you hearing anything?
only what I read, you know, somebody sent me an article that was published and advising everybody in town to vote no on everything.
Oh, yeah, without even, this is, yeah,
We hadn't even proposed it yet, and it was already,
right.
vote no on it.
We hadn't even, it wasn't even being talked.
That was in that, what's that paper called?
I don't
Something
know.
neighbor?
He's on the
Yeah.
opinion.
The paper,
The Newington Neighbor,
That might be it.
just,
that could,
no,
allegedly.
just
that
say
could-
no.
Allegedly, that could be it.
So, so the question is, do we need to meet on the 27th? We have a meeting already scheduled for the 10th, which is, we know it's gonna be Shackford.
John, what's the last date we get to vote on?
Oh, it's not till February, so we have time.
No,
I mean,
I don't think we need to be on the 27th.
I don't think that Shackford is gonna take, I would be shocked if it took more than an hour and a half to wrap that up. I mean, I think we're pretty much there. I think we could do our next zoning meeting that night, and then we could schedule a public hearing. I do know that, the brewery's wants to start, they wanted to be in here this month, they didn't make it, so they're gonna be in probably the second meeting in January, I would say, if they meet the deadline and we can accommodate them.
Brewery is going to see the ZBA at 10 variants.
None,
Or 9.
they withdrew one.
They put in 10.
So they're gonna, is, the brewery gonna be in on the 17th, or we
I
talking
don't-
about the 24th of January?
I don't, Bob, I don't know, all I can tell you is that, John Ritchie had sent me a schedule and said, these are our goals. They met the ZBA goal, the planning board, they want to be in front of you this month. It's, the way, I don't even have an application, so that's not going to happen. They're not, I would doubt, they're not gonna make the January 10th meeting because, what's happened, and it's frustrating you guys, I think to no end, is that you're getting bits and pieces of information at the last minute. So what I really, I'm trying to tell these applicants, it doesn't do you any good to file an application. The deadline is a little over 2 weeks before the meeting. Well, if it takes Eric, if he needs, 10 days notice before he can review a set of plans, what good does it do that? So now what I'm telling them is, get us the plans as soon as we can, and then we'll get a date from Eric as to when he can review these things, and then we'll set the planning board date, because it doesn't do you any good until you have those comments. We're just spinning our wheels.
Something I really hate is getting, all of you part of the same thing, getting information, and then we don't get bits and pieces of it, and then it shows up just, the night before, just hours before coming in. That just, I hate it. I hate it.
So at any rate, that being said, Bob, I don't think, there's no way in heck that we're gonna see the brewery on the 10th of January. I think it'll be a stretch for them to be in a second meeting, but I know they wanna be here. So it is coming,
What is the ZBA meeting?
it's done. Oh, we have a ZBA meeting on another matter on the 3rd of January.
What's the matter?
It's the lot down by Jeff Hyatt's house. The guys, they're tearing that thing down and building a new house.
On the same footprint?
No. What?
Where's he live?
Nimble,
No.
Little Bay Road,
It's a private road.
Yeah.
It's a private
you
road
know
off
where
of
the
Little Bay.
Bowsers live, in that private road down there?
Mhm.
I think that's how you access,
Okay.
I think.
It's an existing
it's
lot of
not
record,
already
but it's been
got
around forever. I think a doctor or dentist from Greenland bought it and then decided not to build there, left, now lives in
Yeah.
Greenland, and now they're selling it, and it's a local person buying it. It's actually kind of nice, so. It's a non-conforming lot with a camp, I would say now, so. So that's coming up on the 3rd. So, yeah, the Stoneface has got all their variances that they need, they think,
I wonder if that was Bowser's old, Mrs. Bowser's.
What's non-conforming about it, John?
It might
Well, it's
be.
non-conforming, it's a good sized lot, it's about an acre, but it's non-conforming in terms of size. And there's an old camp on it that just sort of a rambling thing, and it's too close to the water, not by much, maybe by 30 feet, something like that.
But it's grandfathered in.
It's all grandfathered, so they're gonna tear that down. I think a portion of the house is just in front of the waterfront line, less square footage than exists today.
Less?
Yeah,
Oh, really?
yeah, they're
I
pulling it back.
thought you said they were,
No, they actually pulling it back, so.
are they going up?
Yeah, they're going, well, yeah, it'll be they're going down. It'll be a two-story, it's small, but, 2,400 square foot house.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be nice.
Looks like a lot.
You know what I'm concerned about, I'm not going to talk about any one particular, because I don't wanna do that, but, they say each variance stands on its own merit, but if the merit that it's standing on is consistent with each other time and time and time again, that sets a precedence, and that's what's starting to happen. We typically like to work, the planning board like to work with applicants prior to them going to the ZBA, because many times, if they're gonna come and see us, we can work through those and don't require a variance, because the variance doesn't go with the applicant, it goes with the land. We're gonna get, if it continues, I think we're gonna, at some point, be hurt really bad by that. We need to be very careful about what we're doing. And I'm just very concerned about the future of Newington if we keep letting this happen. But whatever it's worth, I wasn't there, I couldn't see the merits of it, I gotta let it go by that, I have to trust the people on the board. But I do know the Board of Selectmen can ask for an appeal, I don't know if you know that, you're relatively new on the board. Can ask for an appeal if you want to.
Of the ZBA ruling?
Yeah. Or in a butter can, those are the two that can, in a butter or the Board of Selectmen. You have another case, John?
Yeah, and the carrier here, she would tell you, don't ever do that. I mean, you go down that road.
It's happened in this town, I think,
No.
2 or 3 times in the time I've been on the phone.
I mean, I personally, you gotta trust the boards that you have to do the
So
work.
selecting the board it's very important that the people understand the impacts, that's all. And education is everything, I think, is going to seminars and learning the laws and why they're there, not because I like something or I like somebody, it's whatever. All right, enough said. So what I have here, we have 2 things. I got this delight right in front of me in that box. It's a perishable Christmas coffee cake. And I don't, it was sent to me by Jim Tietzel or Wilcox, and came to Town Hall. And I'd like to put it up for grabs for anyone on the board.
That's graph.
I have company in, if no one else wants it, I will take it.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll eat that over the next few days.
All right, well, I was gonna
Or
offer it
I'll
up.
even cut it in half if somebody wants.
Well, I was thinking about doing a lottery or something like that, but I wasn't. You've got one in the office.
Do I?
Yeah. Well, the selectmen do. It's in the main office.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I should just go take it and tell Mike and Ted that,
They're tough.
that,
Yeah, so,
Cheryl's dog ate it.
So, I wasn't sure to offer it up to somebody here on the board, or to draw numbers,
What's the dog's name? Enzo.
You want to do
Sorry, Ted. Enzo.
If no one wants it, just, I think we're not doing it.
All right, you can have it, if I can have a piece of coffee, if I can have a piece of it with coffee. How's that? Not today.
Go into the board.
Is it a nice tin and everything?
Something.
I was trying to offer it up to, last year we just did it, and we all.
There's one in the selectman's office, then that one's up for anybody else that wants it.
Whatever.
You gotta play.
Let's taste it.
Unless someone.
No, if you open it up, you gotta.
Oh, it's one of those.
Old. And then.
All right, I guess that's it. How about a motion to adjourn then?
So moved.
Would anyone like these pretzels, please?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, have a Merry Christmas.
Yeah.